As we go into a more normal market in many parts of the country, this may be a huge opportunity for you to buy a house with no money out of your pocket, and I'm going to tell you how. I'm Shaheedah Hill, getting you over the hill to home ownership and helping you confidently buy your first home. I'm going to tell you how you can get your down payment covered and your closing costs covered and buy your house with no money out of pocket. And I know what you're thinking. Well, I still have to pay for an inspection. I'm going to have to pay for my appraisal with money up front. But the majority of your major expenses are your down payment and your closing costs. And I'm going to tell you how to get those paid. Watch till the end because I want to share with you a mistake that a lot of first-time homebuyers make, and they don't ask for enough and they wind up losing money at closing. First, let's talk about down payment. You can avoid paying a down payment in a variety of ways, and I'm going to tell you 4 ways. Number 1 are VA loans. VA loans are for veterans, and they are 100% financing, meaning there's no down payment needed. So if you're a veteran, you need to see if you can qualify for a VA loan. Number 2 is a USDA loan. USDA loans are also 100% financing, no down payment, and 97% of the land in America qualifies for USDA financing. I did this video with one of the leaders of USDA, and he explains exactly how you can qualify for a USDA loan. Number 3, they have several 100% financing mortgage programs or mortgage loans. You can look into these. I would say for most of the 100% financing loans, the interest rate is typically higher. However, they also have some 100% financing with no PMI. And if you're not putting down a down payment, you'll probably have to pay mortgage insurance. So this is a huge opportunity for people to go in with 100% financing and no PMI. But look again for that higher interest rate. And I made a video about that as well. And then the 4th way to avoid down payment is by using a down payment assistance program. So there are several programs for first-time home buyers, and even if you're not a first-time home buyer, you can get down payment assistance. I have a whole down payment assistance playlist so you can find the best down payment assistance program for you. So we've covered your down payment. Now let's cover closing costs. There are 2 primary ways to get your closing costs paid. One is allowing the seller to pay your closing costs. You have to ask your lender how much you can ask the seller for, how much the seller can contribute to your closing costs. Now, for USDA and FHA, it's usually around 6%. VA is going to be a little bit more. Conventional sometimes is a little bit less. But you want to ask up front during the pre-approval process, how much can the seller contribute to your closing costs? And I'm going to tell you how you'll know how much to ask for from the seller. Number 2 is most down payment assistance programs will help you with closing costs. So if they're offering you a certain amount of money toward the purchase of your home, usually the first part of the money will go toward your down payment. But if there's extra money left over, then that money will go toward your closing costs. So it could be a combination of your down payment assistance program and a combination of your of the seller paying some of your closing costs. If you can combine both of those, you can cover both your down payment and your closing costs. Now, how will you know if the seller will be willing to pay some of your closing costs? Because you'll be putting that in your offer. You'll be asking for the seller to pay some of your closing costs when you make your offer to purchase their home. And these are some key ways to know whether the seller would be willing to contribute to your closing costs. Number 1, they have no offers. If the seller has no offers, they're more willing to negotiate with you. I have a video here that you should watch after this that will tell you if the seller has no offers. Number 2, they have reduced the price of their home. So initially they were asking for one price, they didn't get any offers, or they didn't get the offer that they wanted, and they've reduced the price of their house. Those types of sellers are more likely to pay some of your closing costs. Number 3, they offer it up front. Sometimes in the offer or in their listing, they'll say they'll pay some of your closing costs. Some sellers will put an exact amount to it, like we'll pay $3,000 or $5,000 of your closing costs. And if they're willing to pay that, they're probably willing to pay more. So look in their listing to see if they've already said they're willing to pay some of your closing costs. Another way you can know is the market that you're in. If you are in a normal market or a buyer's market, sellers are more likely to be paying some of your closing costs. A normal market or a buyer's market typically begins around 3 months of inventory. So if there are 3 months of inventory in your market, you're getting to a normal market, the higher the amounts of inventory, then you're in a buyer's market. So know this when you're working with your agent. What kind of market are you in? If you're in a normal market or a buyer's market, sellers are going to be paying closing costs. The more inventory there is, the more likely and the more money they'll put toward your closing costs. Another way is their property, the seller's property, has been on the market much longer than average. So say the average days on the market is 14 days or 2 weeks, but this seller has been on the market for 30 days or 45 days. They're probably more willing to pay your closing costs. Now, one major mistake I don't want you to make is not asking for enough. Let me give you an example if you're going to be asking for closing costs. Say you ask for $9,000 in closing costs and your closing costs are only $8,000. By the time the lender works all the numbers, your closing costs are only $8,000. You can't really do anything with that $1,000 unless you put it in your closing costs, because that $1,000 can't go to other areas typically. So what you want to do is work closely with your lender, and when they're working the numbers for your closing costs, and there's not enough, like you have extra money, you can use that money toward buying down your rate. And if you're not familiar with buying down your rate, you can watch this video about points and how that works. And you always can ask the seller, as part of the overall closing costs, to include those that rate buy down in that amount. So work closely with your lender to say, the seller's willing to pay up to this amount. I want to use it for everything, my closing costs, buying down my rate, all of that. So you want to make sure that you think of those things ahead of time, because if in your contract you don't ask for enough, it's going to be difficult to try to add more closing costs on later on in your transaction.